What's up, everybody? I wanted an old school yellow fog light on the Softail Street Bob, so I got a 4.5-inch fog light, modified the housing, fabricated a bracket, and wired it into the accessory plug. Let's check it out. My name is Ron, and here on this channel I tackle projects of all sizes related to the bikes I ride, and I give you information about the different projects that I work on. And this is video 1 in a 2-part series about the old school incandescent fog light that I added to the Harley-Davidson Softail Street Bob. And in today's video, I'm going to show you the light itself, the modifications I had to make to the housing, and the bracket that I constructed, as well as the fabrication process that I used for that bracket. And in the second video, which I'll link to here whenever I post it, I'll show you the wiring that I had to do inside the light. I'll show you the wiring that I had to do to tie it into the accessory plug on the Softail, and I'll show you the installation process and the finished product. So be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and enable all notifications so you'll be alerted whenever I post that and other future videos. So when I got the idea for this project, I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to add a fog light to the bike, and I thought I wanted to go with just a single light, not a pair of lights. And one of the reasons that I thought I would go with a single light is that visually, from the front of the bike, it would offset that air cleaner, the way that Arlen Ness Monster Sucker sticks out off the side, and would just sort of balance it out when you're looking at the bike from the front. So I decided to stick with the single light concept, and one of the other things that I really wanted was an incandescent bulb. I know LEDs are great. I've got an LED headlight. You may have seen my other video where I swapped out the tail lights for LED 1157 bulbs. And in fact, my front turn signals are LED lights as well. That being said, I really wanted an incandescent fog light for this project. One of the other things that I wanted was a toggle switch, and I wanted that toggle switch to be mounted on the outside of the light housing itself so that I could reach it easily when I was riding the bike and needed to turn that light on or off or switch it from low beam to high beam. And as I mentioned to you in the second video, I'm going to cover all the details on the wiring, so I won't get into that right now, but I will tell you that I tied this into the accessory plug on the Harley-Davidson. That way, whenever I switch the ignition on, that circuit is live, and then I can control that with the toggle switch on the light itself. Let's check it out. The light did come with a mesh grill, but I decided to leave that off for now, so I'm just running it with just the bulb itself in the housing. And there are LED options out there, so if I decided to make the switch on this and go with an LED bulb, I have that option as well. So one of the first things I tackled when I got the light was the housing itself so I could install that toggle switch. I needed to take a look at how much clearance I had inside the housing, and so I just used the process where I looped a little piece of clay, stuck it in there, made sure it was snapped together tight, and then took it back apart and saw how much space I had once that little piece of clay was compressed in there. Once I knew that, I knew what kind of a toggle switch I could go with. So I did a bunch of research, checked dozens of toggle switches to see what kind of depth was required for mounting them, and finally ended up with one that worked just fine. By the way, I will have links to the various things in this project down in the video description. This video is not sponsored, but I'll put links to that stuff in case you have any interest in checking it out for yourself. So I made sure that was clear, marked where I wanted the hole, and then I used a step bit to get it drilled out to just the right size so that I could mount that switch in the housing. The next part of the project was the bracket, and I debated quite a bit on how I wanted to mount this light. Of course, I could have used some sort of a frame mounted bracket, and in the end, I decided to fabricate my own bracket because I just wanted something a little bit different, and I really didn't want to clamp anything onto the frame itself, so I decided to give this a shot. And let me just tell you, my first attempt at making a bracket was a total failure. That being said, I went back to the drawing board and came up with a different concept. I decided to mount it to the motor mount bolt and come up with a bracket that would match the angles in just such a way that the bracket would be perpendicular to the bike once I got it installed. So I started out experimenting with the bends on a little piece of spare steel just to see what kind of an angle I needed to get it to be perpendicular once it was installed onto that motor mount. Once I had a bend that looked like it was going to work well, I headed over to my buddy Tom's workshop, and he was gracious enough to let me use some of his equipment. Using a few of his tools, I was able to put the bend in the final bracket and also cut a few of the other pieces needed to tie everything together. After a few ugly MIG welds and plenty of grinding to smooth everything out, I ended up with a bracket that's going to work just fine for this first prototype. As I mentioned, I wanted that bracket to be perpendicular to the bike once it was installed, and of course I wanted to be able to aim the light up and down as needed so I could get the projection just right. I also wanted that bracket to be parallel to the road when I was riding, and I wanted it to space the light far enough away from the bike so that when it was turned on, it didn't have any interference from the fork so that it was not blocking the light in any way, and allow it to project clearly onto the road without any obstruction whatsoever. So I went ahead and drilled the mounting holes for that, for where the motor mount bolt will go in and also where the light mount bolt itself will go, and dry fitted it on the motorcycle to see how everything lined up. Thumbs up, it's going to work just fine. So I've got a working bracket for the fog light. The next phase of the project is going to be finishing up all the wiring, and as I alluded to, not only am I going to have the toggle switch for turning the light on and off and being able to use high and low beam, I want to wire that into the accessory switch. Why am I bothering to wire it into the accessory plug if I've got a toggle switch that lets me turn it off? And the reason is I just wanted that extra bit of assurance to know that there's no chance that that fog light would drain the battery under any circumstances. So if the ignition is off, that circuit is dead and it will not pull anything from the battery. Nobody wants to be stranded. So like I said, that second attempt at the bracket worked just fine. I can tell you this though, one thing I noticed right away with that, over time, even though that motor mount bolt is torqued to specs, just because of vibration, hitting bumps, the effects of gravity, that light will drop down ever so slightly, maybe a ½ inch or so. I still haven't addressed it, but I plan to either do a third version of the bracket in the future or make a modification to this bracket. So I'd like to find a way to be able to put an extra tab on that bracket or something like that, just to lock it in a little bit better so that it doesn't have any movement whatsoever. So again, that may be a future modification to this bracket, but in general, so far it's worked out well. And so in the next video, we're going to cover the wiring process and how I tied that into the Harley-Davidson accessory plug on the bike. Drop in a comment and let me know if you have any questions about the project that I've shown so far, the bracket that I made, or the modifications that I made to the switch housing. And let me know if you're using a fog light. Have you tried a fog light like this, or using an LED fog light, or some other variation on the theme? And did you wire it into your accessory plug? I'd love to hear more about that. And as you heard me mention, I'd like to do some sort of a modification to this bracket to prevent it from moving once everything's tightened down. So if you have any thoughts on that or any ideas, drop those in the comments as well. I really appreciate that interaction on the channel, and I'm sure the rest of the community finds benefit in that as well. Once I post the second video in this series, I'll put a link here so you can easily get to that. If you found this video useful or informational, please do hit the thumbs up button and share it with your friends. That really helps the channel out a lot. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please consider doing that, hitting the notification bell and enabling all notifications. That way you'll be alerted for that next video in this series and all the future videos as well. Thanks so much for watching. Enjoy the ride. I'll see you next time.